Sean, I firmly believe that the Ravens now clearly have the best secondary in the NFL. And frankly, there's no debate. They signed Jaire Alexander, who has been inconsistently available because of injuries, but he is still one of the best when on the field corners in the NFL. He joins on a 1-year, $6 million deal, a secondary that even if he does get banged up, will not be sold out to dry if he does not play because the group is so loaded. It's insane to look at this. Marlon Humphrey in the slot. You've got Nate Wiggins as the other opposite corner. You've got Alexander starting outside. You have TJ Tampa as your third corner who can rotate in, who's tall, long, athletic kid. And then they just drafted Malachi Starks to play alongside Kyle Hamilton. This is a bonkers group. This is going to be one of the hardest groups to throw against. And they're loaded with not only like instinctual talent, but athletic talent. I don't know how anyone could look across the NFL and think, oh no, that secondary is better than the Ravens, because this is without a doubt the best unit.
Ravens fans love injury excusing it up as to why they didn't make the Super Bowl. This DB room, that approach will effectively negate that argument if only 1 or 2 injuries happen, because you have depth now. And the reason that everyone has acknowledged what the Philadelphia Eagles have done with their defense, it's not just the talent. It's not because they have 11. It's because they have 17. It's because they got 6 more dudes that they can rotate in, and you're not seeing them dip below that line of demarcation of good football player. You just don't see it. And the Ravens building depth in the defensive backfield just makes it easier. It makes everything easier. If Humphrey goes down, you have 2 guys that can slot in, and then you don't have to ask the linebackers or the defensive linemen to do more than they're needed to do. Everyone can continue doing their jobs with good depth. It's a great signing by the Ravens, and the Ravens operate at a higher frequency than a lot of NFL teams, and they make deals that make sense. And it's also easy to say good teams when they add a player.
Right.
It works. It's way easier to say that, but they continuously do it. The window doesn't open up much more for them, in my opinion. It's not the Ravens' year until it's the Ravens' year, and that's how I'm going to treat them. But good God, are they a fun team, and they continue to make good moves.
This might be one of the craziest off seasons that we've witnessed for a team that was already in Super Bowl contention.
Yep.
Knowing what their run game was able to do last year and how already dynamic they are on offense, maybe their weakest position group is receiver, is what we could talk about, which is nuts to say because Rashad Bateman's a really good player.
He's gotten better. I thought Bateman was going to be out. Yeah. Flowers is solid. And then don't worry, you got nice flashy young D-Hop coming in to provide the youth.
Right. You have all of these different faces that play to the skill set on offense, and then to round out your defense with a guy that, like, you, as long as Jaire Alexander is there in the playoffs, I think that's all you need. You already know that this team can win the AFC North, and if it doesn't, they still at the very least go 11-6. And they get to the playoffs, and then they go on a run. They string together a run. The Ravens always do this. They always have like that, that patch of slow games
late season.
Right. It happens.
It won Lamar an MVP.
Yes.
Their December 2 years ago won Lamar Jackson an MVP because everyone else was falling. The Ravens were healthy and just brutally bashing teams in, the best teams. They ran over the Eagles, the 49ers, and the Bills all in December 2 years ago and won an MVP for Lamar Jackson because they stick around. Did they get bounced early? Yeah, that's what they do. But for real quality football, the Ravens are going to be among any other team in the NFL. All 17 games they play regular season, there may not be a better team. Postseason, different story.
Them now having, though, another veteran like this that has been at an all-pro level it's almost expected at this point. We always talk about this as like, man, oh, shock, the Ravens are the team that's in contention. The only thing that would have been more predictable is if he had signed with the Chiefs, if that was where he went. I would just throw this in there, though, to round this out before we jump over to the next topic. I appreciate the irony of the cheapness of the Cincinnati Bengals, the fact that they are blundering, improving their defensive line, and keeping their best player in Trey Hendrickson. We've already talked about the contract situation with Shamar Stewart. They desperately needed to sign a player like Jaire Alexander, and they probably could have for 1 year, $6 million. 1 year, $6 million. That was how cheap it was.
Yep.
You could have convinced him if your front office wasn't such a big group of dipshits,
morons,
that no one would want to. I'm sure that no agent is selling to their guys that like they want them and they think they should go sign over there because you will get screwed in some circumstance. But with all of the calamity that is happening in Cincinnati within the same division in a position where they could be a Super Bowl team if their secondary was just a little bit better. And the way you get a little bit better is bringing in a guy like Jaire Alexander. The fact that all that happens and the rich get the richest in this spot with Baltimore doing it is so nuts to put that context together after we take a step back and we look at the whole division.
I love that you brought up Cincinnati for this because, correct me if I'm wrong, between Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, one of them has been to a Super Bowl, one of them hasn't. And right now, the way that the team that has been to a Super Bowl with their franchise quarterback is operating versus the team that hasn't been to one is shocking. It is unfathomable. Like this is a move that Cincinnati needs to be making. Cincinnati is so far behind the 8 ball when it comes to roster operations that why would anyone have a sense of optimism for this year? They should, because they have a top 5 quarterback, a top 3 wide receiver, and a top 20 wide receiver to go along with that, and an up-and-coming running back and a great defensive. Like, everything that they're doing is so backwards that they're just playing catch-up ball. And the Ravens are being proactive. Bengals reactive. And that's the that's if Cincinnati doesn't make the playoffs this year, it'll be one of the biggest crimes against the football watching public and that we've seen. Just if they don't. The Ravens, though, have put themselves in a position where it's expected for them to. Like, there's no shock if the Ravens win the AFC North.
The biggest piece of this is that they didn't even need Jaire Alexander. No one even expected Alexander to have been available. I'm sure that maybe they had participated in some of the apparent trade talks that had been happening, but yeah, this is insane. And I would actually argue that, like, I think what's actually probably going to happen with Cincinnati this year that'll be even more obnoxious and ridiculous. I think Cincinnati gets to the playoffs because Joe Burrow and their offense is so good.
Yeah.
But they're going to be like a Phillip Rivers type team. Remember that one year where they had the best offense, but their defense was like one of the worst in the NFL and they got bounced? They had like a bunch of statistical insane records that they had when he was with the Chargers, when Phillip Rivers was with the Chargers. It feels like that's what Joe Burrow is turning into. He's going to be Phillip Rivers for the rest of his career.
God, that's a bummer. He's better than that.
1,000,000 yards and just nowhere.
I
don't think he's actually. I think comparing him to Phillip Rivers, like for his career arc, I think it's pretty fair. I don't think he's like that much better than Phillip Rivers physically.
But mentally, he's got the killer edge. Rivers
did. He just never had the right amount of help.
Now, Rivers never was good enough. He just wasn't. He was a great quarterback, but he was never good enough to be that killer. There can only be so few killers in the league, and I think there's 3 at a time. Who has done worse by their quarterback this year, Joe? Cincinnati or Houston? 2 up-and-coming, big-time quarterbacks.
Far. Oh, that's great. Because Houston,
I could see a world where neither make the playoffs, and both teams should pitch for their quarterbacks to leave.
They've at least been willing to spend and make moves. I think that, and they've done a really good job of drafting. I think that their mistakes have more so just been from bad offensive line construction. And like fixing a bad offensive line is a multi-year process.
Yeah.
It is not something that you can quickly accomplish in one offseason. I think that that's all they've been trying to do is a bit of a major reset there.